What's up, YouTube? For those of y'all that don't know me, my name's Keenan. Most of y'all know me by EVO on Instagram. As y'all know, I've been wanting to put a vlog together for quite a while already. I've just done so much to the car and I really don't have anything to document it that I'd really like to look back on myself. But not only for that, is that on my Instagram, I get tons of questions about my car just about every time that I post it. From little things about the dash, the gauge pod, the wheels, turbo setup, fuel system, you name it, I've had a question for it. So I took this opportunity this year, mind you, there's gonna be a lot of changes, to document everything because I'm gonna take the whole car apart, the engine, the transmission, all the interior, the whole drive line, and completely redo the car inside and out. Just to get it out there. This is the first time in my life that I'm ever vlogging myself or videoing myself and editing. So bear with me on the first few videos. I'm learning, and let me show you guys the interesting stuff. All right, guys, now for what you wanted to see, the EVO. All right, guys, the main purpose of this video today is pretty much to show you the car, what I have on it, and pretty much just to explain a couple things and answer a couple questions that I've had on Instagram. So let's have at it. Mind you, I know a lot of y'all see the Aero Catch hood releases on a lot of cars, but man, this quick latch kit, I gotta say, it's pretty freaking nice and about 10 times easier to install. All you gotta do is drill a couple holes, tighten it down with some Loctite, of course the mounts, and you're there. But here she is. Pretty much the breakdown of the car is that I have a 4G64 2.4 liter engine. Is de-stroked down to a 2.1 liter, which means it took a 88 millimeter crank out from a traditional EVO 4G63 engine, which is obviously what I had in here before, with 156 millimeter rods, which is 6 millimeters longer than the traditional 150, and with 87 millimeter pistons, which is 20 over. And the factory bore size is 86.5 on a 6.4, and you get yourself a 2.1 liter. Advantages of that is, for one, the rod stroke ratio is actually greater than a traditional 2.0 liter, so that means that you can rev it higher. I would say a safe 10,000 RPM. I keep it at a very conservative 9,200 for obvious reasons. But it has an OEM crank, aluminum R&R solid beam rods, it has custom diamond racing pistons with vertical gas ports and horizontal gas ports. As far as the head is a old style MAP stage 5 port job, which to my knowledge, I believe, don't quote me on this, that they used to send those heads out to head games and have them done. So it's actually a very nice port job, along with a full SuperTech valve train, Inconel exhaust valves, stainless black nitrided intake valves. I have 110-pound dual valve spring kit from SuperTech with titanium retainers and GSC S3 cams. And that's about it for the engine. And she makes 1106 horsepower and 789 foot-pounds of torque on a Dynajet. I know how big you guys are about Mustang dynos, Dynajets, whatever. But yes, on a Dynajet dyno at 51 pounds of boost. It has a Precision 7275 turbo with a T4 housing on it, twin 45mm turbo smart wastegates. I have the AMS F1i intake manifold with LPS Fab's intake manifold flange to convert it to an 8 injector setup. So that's 2 injectors per cylinder for staged injection. Pretty much so I don't run out of fuel. With FID 1700cc injectors, all 8 of them. I'm also using a DVD Fab. I know some of you older guys or people that have been in the EVO DSM scene for a while know what DVD Fab is. And a Weldon mechanical fuel pump. And that is what supplies all the fuel that I need to the engine. And one of the big things about going to a mechanical fuel pump is that you have to install that monster back over there of a fuel pressure regulator. Wow. And one thing that I did forget to mention about the block is that it does have a concrete fill. And what that is that you take something that is similar to concrete, a lot of people call it block fill from like Moroso or whatnot, and you fill the water passages in the block. So technically I have no coolant running through the block. So with that being said, in order to keep the oil temps down, you have to get a pretty monstrous oil cooler if you want to drive it on the street. I know a lot of people say, hey, concrete fill isn't for the street, you know, you can't do full block fill, yada, yada, yada. Well, I can tell you this. For over a year already, I have driven this car in South Texas heat, 90-degree days, and I have not had an issue. All I do is I run distilled water and Redline water wetter. Let me show you what that is. This stuff right here, and your regular old distilled water. But if y'all ever had that question, can you street drive a full filled car? All I can say is that I do it. Would I recommend it? You know, in the southern states like where I'm at, where it gets really hot, I don't recommend driving it during the daytime. Sunset, sunrise, nighttime. I personally have never had an issue with it. During the day, I can say that the coolant temps run hotter than what I want. Whenever I say that, I mean like 205-degree coolant temps, 205 to 210-degree oil temps, which to most of y'all, that's normal operating range, right? But I like to be on the conservative side. So moving on from the whole engine part of it, transmission, I originally got it built from Shep Trans. You know, I had the works done to it, ran my ISF polish, and billet output tubes, HKS 411 final drive. Through the years, JMS Racing in San Antonio now builds the transmission every time I need a rebuild. And that is also who assembled the block. So now the transmission has a Liberty dog engagement first and second gear. And so I did that to pretty much get a more consistent 60 foot. And for pretty much first and second gear, I wouldn't have to worry about a synchro lockout. The third and fourth gear and fifth gear are still synchronized, but I use Synchrotech carbon synchros. If you guys watching that have EVOs or Hondas or whatnot have never heard of Synchrotech or carbon synchros, definitely give it a view. Look at it, consider it. It is way better than your standard OEM synchronizer. And from what I understand is that the carbon synchros, they bite a lot better than the factory synchronizers, so they slow the gears down faster during a gear change, so that it allows you to get it in gear easier. And it helps, it doesn't take it away, but it helps prevent a lockout at high RPM. As far as the T-case, I have Jax Trans, what they called, you know, I guess years ago, whenever I got it built, maybe 5 years ago, was their indestructible T-case. And whatever that consists of, as far as a new ring and pinion, they treat it, do everything else, you know, I can tell you this, at 1100 horsepower, you know, 783 foot-pounds of torque, and I've had it at over 900 horsepower for, I gotta say, 4 years already. I have not broke the T-case. They don't offer it anymore. I think they go up to like a stage 3 or whatnot. But I've launched this car, I gotta say, 150 times, 200 times, and I have not broke the T-case. Next up is the rear end. The rear end I did get through TRE, Team Rip Engineering, and it does have the 12-plate max lock upgrade. You know, he does his work to it, does his thing, and I've not had an issue with that either at all. Alright guys, so I've had questions about things like my Pro EFI display and logger, and let me show y'all what that is. That is this little guy right here. Let me show you what it does. So this thing will pretty much tell me anything I need to know about the car. It'll show up to 4 gauges at one time. On my first screen, I have engine RPM, oil pressure, oil temperature, and coolant temp. Next page, you can see boost pressure, air to fuel ratio, fuel pressure, battery volts, mile per hour, ethanol percentage, and engine horsepower. It'll actually estimate how much horsepower you're making at any given time for the car. So that's actually pretty cool. This is an RPM gauge because as of right now, for the race pack, I have not figured out how to make some of the functions work on here. It's not receiving the signal from the ECU. So whenever I race, I use this, and it also acts as a shift light. It'll blink and show yellow whenever I need to shift, mile per hour, and it'll log everything. Pretty freaking cool. For those of y'all that want to know, because I've had this question just recently, if this CAN display logger works with another ECU, I don't know. I know it works off of a CAN high-low signal, but I will get back to Pro EFI and ask them if it'll work for another ECU. So in the next video, I'll be sure to mention that and answer that question. I've been asked numerous times, what do these guys do? This one right here is for rolling anti-lag. So whenever I want to roll race, I get up to whatever speed I want to get to. I hold it down. Boom. Look at my TPS. I floor it to 100% as I'm holding this button down, and it'll build boost, and the car will pretty much, for the most part, stay stationary until I let it off. And instead of brake boosting, you can use rolling anti-lag. For this other button right here, it is called a scramble boost button. And I have that button set up to where it adds 5 pounds of boost anytime I click the button. So good thing about that is if I'm losing and I want to risk it all and I want to say screw it, I'll blow this bitch up if I need to, excuse my language, I'll hit the button and hopefully win the race. But I haven't used it yet. I've used it testing it out. It does work. So that's a pretty cool feature. Another thing I want to show you guys is my AM 12 position switch. This is actually 4 different boost levels. That is 30 pounds, 35 pounds, 40 pounds, 45 pounds, 50. Now, I can tell you this much. I have not once driven the car on the 50-pound boost setting. I have yet to do it. Scares the hell out of me at 45 pounds. So I can just imagine what 50, you know, on the street it really makes like 51, 52 pounds. I can only imagine what that feels like, because 45 is just insane. Another thing I want to show you guys, that bottle right there. I've gotten quite a few questions on it. What is it? What does it do? That bottle is actually for CO2 boost control. And for those of you that don't know what CO2 boost control is that instead of using the pressure coming off the turbo to go to the wastegates and keep them closed and control the boost controller, I'm using pressurized CO2 gas. It offers a more consistent
boost control. Like, I know a lot of you guys that run turbos, you know, on cold days and whatnot, you tend to see a little bit more boost than what you usually would for the denser air. With CO2 boost control, don't have that issue. It also, you know, I don't know the technical reasons behind it, but for being in a 72 millimeter turbo, from last year's Dynograph to this year's Dynograph, I gained 10 to almost 12% power in the mid range, because the CO2 control actually helps spool the turbo faster, and that is one big benefit to having that CO2 gas. So there's that. I think that's pretty much all you guys should want to know about the interior. And you don't think we're gonna end this video without turning the car on and letting y'all hear it. So here we go.